I think a lot of us are really frustrated by the political situations in our country or whatever. I'm in the US, you may be in the UK, but whatever the situation, generally speaking, our leaders aren't doing what we want them to do. And there's actually a really interesting reason for that, which is essentially all politicians believe they have the right answer. And while this seems like a good thing from the perspective of somebody who agrees with them, it is almost never a good thing because generally speaking, there is no one solution. And that's something that I don't think people realize often enough. I'm of the mentality that we need to create a system in which people have ultimate freedom. Not like unlimited freedom to where they can do literally anything they want. I still think it's good to, limit murdering and stuff like that because that generally is taking away somebody's ability to be free. So that's problematic. But generally speaking, we have too many rules. We have too many conditions. We have too many specifics. And at this point, at least in the US, I think we have too many laws and they need to be kind of whittled down to the most fundamental things, which is fascinating because I don't think that's a job for anybody in the government. I don't think there's a job for whittling down and getting rid of useless laws. So we just keep wrapping things up in more red tape when the reality is we need to start opening up possibilities again because we're entering a new phase of humanity that I think a lot of people are terrified of, where they have this idea of technology's taking over, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose my income, and then my life's going to become virtually meaningless. But the only reason your life would become meaningless is because you aren't imagining the possibilities for what you could be doing. For example, Andrew Yang was a politician, has been a politician, I guess. He ran for mayor at one point, but he also was in the presidential run in the US in 2020. And he proposed the concept of universal basic income, which actually got a lot of pushback where people are like, well, people are lazy. They're just going to quit doing anything. They're going to sit on their couch and watch TV. And while I understand this perspective, I always ask the question, would you do that? Would you, if your job disappeared, sit on your couch and just watch TV for the rest of your life? And my guess is the answer is no. And if you do say that you would do that for the rest of your life, I don't think you're thinking far enough. Because generally speaking, we humans are very curious by nature. We have to keep learning, we have to keep growing. It is part of our fundamental makeup. So, this idea of people just sitting around doing nothing, being lazy, well, simultaneously, I don't know why that would matter, but it's not even true. It's not even likely. It's not even possible. So some people may do that for a couple months because they're trying to heal the trauma of, spending their whole life doing things they hate and feeling drained of all their energy. So they need to kind of like refill the coffers. But the reality is most of us are going to become inspired for the first time ever. Our imagination is going to run free. And that is ultimately the beauty of where our society is heading. That's the beauty of AI and robotics. We're moving into an age of technology which allows us to embrace a new future, to fully embrace what it is to be human, to become creative, to invent things, to draw and write and just inspire each other and have fun and play around. And ultimately, I think that means we're going to have the most fun any season of humans has ever had. And in all likelihood, if we keep going long enough, we'll reach a golden age far beyond what anybody has ever dreamed of before. Now, there are definitely people who write books about this who are very nihilistic in their perspective, where they're like, well, when you have ultimate freedom, you potentially are just going to do all the extremes and kill yourself and all this and whatnot. There are even books on this, the Scythe series, I believe, where literally they can bring people back from death and then some of the teenagers plop or splat for recreational purposes where they're jumping off buildings and killing themselves. So I think that story is a little weird. I don't think we're at that level of technology, but anyway you look at it, it's probably only the guys going to do that anyway. Because guys, their role is to push the bounds. And generally speaking, going extreme is something that's fairly common for men in general. So if you know that it's safe, it's going to be a little bit harder to push the boundaries because there is no boundary that you can push. But that's kind of beside the point because the reality is moving into this future doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to struggle anymore. And I think that's the part that people are actually scared of. The idea that every problem we ever had will be fixed and there will be nothing for us to do. But that's not the case, because if you think about your life right now, what are the most complicated problems you face? Because I'm going to bet it's other people. And other people are still going to exist. They're still going to cause problems for you. You're still going to have to learn how to connect with them, how to communicate, how to meld lives together. And in fact, I think this type of society would allow us to invest more time into those relationships, which actually enhances our capability to connect with each other. So the reason politicians suck is because they think that they have the solution that can fix whatever problem we're facing right now, when the reality is we need less solutions and more opportunities. So we need to open the doors for creativity. And that is where the concept of an open society comes in. Now, I was first introduced to the concept of an open society through a book called Trekonomics, which basically explores the economy of Star Trek. And I can't say that I ever thought about the economy of Star Trek when I watched the show. And while I do enjoy the show to some extent, it never occurred to me to wonder how the money worked in their system. And there are some episodes that go a little bit into detail on those things, but generally speaking, I don't think people talk about it. But as I was reading this book, it kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities that Star Trek presented that I never considered. And shows like this have inspired any number of inventions, like the cell phone, for example. That was something that was inspired by Star Trek, as far as we can tell. But it never occurred to me that the economy of Star Trek could be something that we could aspire to and create within our community as well. But the basic concept, I think, is explored really well in the Ugly series, which is another fiction series. But essentially, they live in a world of abundance. And then as they go through this process, as the society continues to evolve, they actually create a status based economy where your survival is guaranteed, but there is still the desire to strive for status and reputation and legacy. So people continue to compete against each other. They continue to try to improve things. And the same thing happens in Star Trek, where you've got the inventors who are coming up with new ways to approach old problems or fix problems that are popping up that we didn't know were going to happen until we reach this point in history or whatever. So I think this idea that there's not going to be any competition, there's not going to be something to work for is just ludicrous. Like there's always going to be more. There's always expansion. Eventually we'll probably get to the point where we're figuring out how to colonize other planets. And I mean, like Elon Musk's already doing that. So we have these other problems or these other potentials that we can explore. And we don't need to fear having the time to do that. So politicians, I think you're great in the fact that you're trying to make the world a better place, but I think you're faulty in believing that there is one path for everybody, because there isn't. I certainly don't want the same life that my husband wants, even. And I doubt my children will want the same life that I want, because the reality is we're different people. And these are the people that are closest to me. I don't want the same life that my older sister wants. I don't want the same life that my parents want. And my parents want very different lives from each other as well, hence the divorce. So, all things considered, we have to stop trying to project and say that we have the answer or that there is just one solution when there isn't. It's really, really important to note that. We need to open it up and allow the ultimate freedom and allow the ultimate opportunity by taking care of each other and becoming a greater community. So that's my goal as far as moving our society forward, is I want to start embracing this open society concept and creating that with other people who see this potential. And then as other people see how this community could function or how this society could function, then it becomes less scary for them to step into. So I am definitely at the head of a movement, which is a little scary, but at the same time, I think it's definitely worthwhile. And if you're somebody who's inspired by this concept, absolutely reach out to me, because honestly, I need more people to help me with this. I have no clue what I'm doing in many instances, but I am so inspired to do this concept. And I have so many ideas, but I'm only one person. So I need the help. So definitely reach out and we'll build this thing together.